Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, we're going to go on a little road trip today. It's not quite the one I'd planned to do, but it's going to be close. Here's what's going on. I kind of for the last few days have been in the mood to go explore a cave. You know, I like to do that. I've visited a couple caves in the area, and there's a couple more I want to visit. I was looking up where they were this morning, hoping maybe we'd go to one of them. Well, it turns out they're all about 200 miles away, really close to San Antonio. And it turns out there's 3 of them there that I want to visit, and they're all within like 20 miles of each other. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's not a one-day trip. That's going to be an overnight kind of thing. You drive there, you hit one of the caves, maybe 2 of the caves, spend the night, hit the next cave the next day, and drive home. So that's not going to work out today, but I'm still kind of in the mood to go caving. And so what today we're going to do is we're going to go back to a cave that I visited in the first year I was here. We're going to go to the Inner Space Caverns. This will give me an opportunity to film this place on the new camera. Remember, I was still using the cell phone camera at that point, and this camera should deal better in the darkness and hopefully get some better video. So, like I said, I'm doing this more for me. I want to go caving today, and that's really the only option. So, let's go to the Inner Space Caverns. Okay, we've made the drive to Georgetown. It's about 60 miles, so I was on the road for about an hour. Not too bad of a drive. This is a place I remember from before, but they've actually done some building in the area. I don't remember any of this being here. I don't know. I know they've been trying to increase tourism in the area, and one of the things they did is they built this zip line thing that you can ride on. Now, I don't know. They don't seem to have people going up there at this point, so maybe they don't do that as much, or maybe they just discovered there wasn't that much appeal to it, because honestly, it doesn't look like a whole lot of activities going on here. And I could see how that could be an issue. That's an awful big ladder you got to climb up. And I was kind of hoping that since it was a weekday and day it had been raining at night, that maybe there wouldn't be a lot of people here, but we're on summer, and I guess I didn't think about that, and looks like there's some schools that are here, so maybe we might be battling with child noise here. That's always fun, right? Anyway, let's go in and check this place out. Now, the discovery of this place was kind of an accident, kind of a funny story. We're right along I-35, which is right here, and in 1963 they were just getting ready to build the freeway, and they needed to do some core drilling to find out what was underneath. So they found, figure out if it was, if the ground was strong enough to hold the weight of the freeway. And it turns out one of the holes that they drilled, the drill bit fell off and fell into the hole, and apparently the drill bit had punctured the inside of the cave, and once they dug it out, they found out that there was a real big cavern in here, and it's all right beneath us right now. So, like I said, we're going to go in and check that out, but it's a funny story, and I thought I'd tell you. You notice as you go down, it gets cooler and cooler. It's actually really nice in here. Apparently the temperature hovers at 72 degrees year-round, no matter what's happening outside.
All right, just come up to about right here. This is a perfect size group. Everybody can fit in our little spaces here. Good. All right, so this is our first official stop, our first room, if you want to call it that. This is called Soda Straw Balcony. So Soda Straw Balcony, why is it called that? It's because of these things up here. There's hundreds of them, and there's some even bigger ones back there, if you can see in the very back. So they're called soda straws because, just like the name implies, they're these hollow tubes. You could theoretically snap one off and put it in your drink, and you could drink out of it. It's a hollow tube. Of course, we're not going to do that. And they're composed of this mineral called calcite. Calcite is hugely important in this cave. All of these formations I'm going to talk about today are made of calcite. So just a quick chemistry/geology little tutorial. How did these things get here? So it starts off with this stone up here, which is limestone. Very common. Everybody's heard of limestone. But limestone has a particular property, is that it allows water to pass through it, to trickle down through it or percolate, whatever word you want to use. So when it rains at the surface, that water actually soaks into the limestone and slowly moves its way through the rock. As it does so, it picks up carbon dioxide that's trapped in the rocks, making the water slightly acidic, a weak acid called carbonic acid. Now that carbonic acid proceeds to start dissolving the limestone, releasing this mineral called calcite into a solution. Now if you'll notice, on the ends of a lot of these soda straws, you see the drops of water hanging there? See, most of them have a drop of water hanging there. So that is really the process happening itself. So when that droplet finally does fall away, remember it's saturated with calcite, it's going to deposit some calcite right on the end of that feature, that straw, making it just a little bit longer. Okay? And so that's how these things grow. It's just a deposition of calcite. So now sometimes these soda straws can become clogged, and then they start to, so in other words, the water droplet on a normal soda straw, the water droplet actually travels on the inside of the tube, down to the end. But when they become clogged, it can't do that anymore, so the water kind of backs up and starts flowing out and around the side of the feature, and they take on this like carrot shape. You can see that one there clearly. There's a couple more over here. They're fatter and they look like a carrot. Now that process continues for a while until they end up looking like these two back here that are hanging from the ceiling. And when they get to that stage, we call them a stalactite. Now I'm not sure where the threshold is between soda straw and stalactite, but these are called stalactites. Now hanging on the very end of that longest one there, it's hard to see, but there's a little drop of water waiting to fall. So when it does fall, it's going to make that stalactite just a little bit longer, and then the water droplet's going to fall down and hit the floor, but it's still got a bunch of calcite in it. So then the calcite starts to accumulate on the floor and build upwards. And we call that a stalagmite, because it might reach the ceiling one day, right? So we got stalactite hanging tight to the ceiling. Stalagmite might reach the ceiling one day. So that process continues for long periods of time, and eventually those two things can actually join together, like this thing right here and these over here. We call that a column. A feature that extends from the floor to the ceiling is called a column. Okay? So we got soda straws. They start to fatten up and form stalactites, which actually end up forming stalagmites, and then they come together to form a column. Okay? And then finally over here is something very different, which is what we call flowstone. You can see it looks very different, but it's kind of the same process. Water rich in calcite is leaching down through the limestone, but instead of just dripping, it's going to run over a surface, usually like big rocks. Okay, and as it does that, it's depositing calcite on top of those rocks and making these cool formations that we call flowstone. And we've got some really amazing, beautiful flowstones in our cave, so I think you're going to like that. All right, so this is our second stop. This is called Drapery Room because of this thing, which, you know, definitely stands out to you when you first walk in. So this is another calcite formation, but there weren't really any good examples in the other rooms, so we just mention it here. Now, so they're formed by kind of the same process. Water is coming down through that limestone ceiling, but instead of just coming through in random spots and dripping, it's coming through a crack or a fissure in the rock. And water has this property called cohesion. It wants to kind of stick with other, water molecules. So when the water comes down out of that crack, it's going to run along the crack a little bit before dropping down. And it's going to tend to kind of drop down in random places. But what we end up with is the sheet-like feature. And this is called a cavern drapery or a cave curtain. And they look really cool. They're really beautiful. And so you can see, because of all the rain that we've gotten recently, hopefully everybody can see, there's a lot of water dripping off that one onto the bottom here, right? So initially it started off with as just the cave curtain at the top, and then it was dripping to the floor and started as stalagmite. But now that it's been going for enough time, the two have joined together. So this is a special kind of column we call a drapery column. And I'll tell you a little bit more later about the time frames involved here. This is a long, long period of time to form this much of a formation. But and now we'll talk about time frames in a little while. So cave curtains, and as you're walking past, if you can't see right now, up along the back ridge there's just a bunch of little baby cave curtains forming. Okay, and down on the floor we've got some some nice stalagmites. And a really cool example of that flowstone I was mentioning. It starts way back there and comes all the way around the room, all the way around the corner. So you're talking thousands and thousands of years for something that large to develop. Now I know your curiosity is burning. I'm gonna give you some relief here. So let's look over our head. So this is the same stuff we saw in the photo room, right? Over to the left we've got that classic dolomite / limestone. Okay, over here in the ceiling of the chamber, we got dolomite limestone, but here this is very different. So to understand what this is, you got to go back about between 100 and 120 million years ago. This part of Texas as well as a strip of land going north, like what we would call the Midwest, I guess, was under a shallow sea called the Western Interior Seaway. It ranged from 10 to 20 feet deep, so very shallow. And of course, at this latitude, the water was nice and warm. So we had nice, shallow, warm water, and there was a species of sponge that thought the conditions were just right. So they formed a reef here. So you've all heard of a coral reef before, right? This is a sponge reef. These were ancient sponges, and what we're looking at is the bottom. I'll talk more about that in a bit. And they lived here. Okay, now mixed in with these corals, with these sponges, you will see the occasional coral. Can you see those right there? So there was a few corals sprinkled in, with the sponges. Okay, and then you might also notice these weird tubular-looking things, like here, over in here. And there was actually Now those are kind of like an ancient ancestor of a modern-day clam. So these mollusks, like snails, kind of slimy little things, invertebrates. They built a tubular calcium carbonate shell around themselves, like my flashlight kind of, and they would, slide around and do whatever it is that they do. But when they felt threatened, they could retract into that shell and basically close the end of it for protection. So mostly this was sponges mixed in with some coral and some of these rudist bivalves. That's what they were called. Okay. And so where we're standing right now, 100 million years ago, was solid limestone. It was the bottom of that shallow sea. In the formation of this cave, everywhere we're standing, this limestone was dissolved away. So 100 million years later, we can stand here and look at the bottom of a fossilized reef. Isn't that cool? Yeah. And at the time this was alive, dinosaurs were walking around. Because again, this was created about 100 million years ago. Dinosaurs would exist for about another, roughly 40 million years. So, yeah. Now, if we could, just everybody come up to the formation. Okay, so the next room we're going to go into is what we call the discovery room. That was where the cavern was discovered. So of course, once they discovered it and saw how big it was, they wanted to start exploring. This was the first other room that they found. So it was called the first formation room because it was the first and also all these beautiful formations. But it's no longer called that. So kids out there, what does this remind you of right here? Does that remind you of anything?
Ice cream.
Ice cream, perfect. So this is called the ice cream parlor. We got vanilla ice cream, got chocolate ice cream over there, got a big puddle of chocolate syrup, and the world's biggest Texas-sized ice cream sandwich. And you know what flavor it is, right? Rocky Road. Oh, yeah. All right. So I told you I would tell you about time frames. So this is a good place to do it. So these stalactites right here, right? Remember, there's drops of water that are making their way down to the very end. It's going to fall off. It's going to make that thing just a little bit longer. Does anybody want to take a guess? How long do you think it would take, on average, for these to grow by 1 inch? What do you think would be a reasonable amount of time? Yes? 500 years. That's a good start. Anybody else? One more number. A million years. That's a good range. Okay. Well, it turns out to be about 100 years. But if you think about that, we could come back 100 years later, and we would expect, on average, these things to be 1 inch longer. So that's a very slow process, right? So, and then when you put that into context, look at these columns back here. How many years is that? Yes. Okay. I'll just say that this is not official. I just did some mental math, and I calculated somewhere around 12,000 years. And that's a long, long time, right? Yeah. That's twice as old as the oldest human civilizations, like in the Mesopotamia, right? So that's something. How long does it take something like this? It kind of just blows your mind. Yeah, so one last thing before we leave this little room is right above my head right here is a delicious looking piece of cave bacon.
Then you don't have to grab food. Shoddy. Okay, shoddy. Wow, that's good.
Yeah. Come on down. quick history lesson. In 1963, the Texas Highway Department was building Interstate 35, which you probably came in on. And, okay, so they're building it at this particular place. It runs roughly north-south. Okay? Then you may also have noticed you drove over a set of railroad tracks that come into our parking lot. That runs east-west. Meaning, as they were building the highway, they're going to have to build an overpass over the railroad tracks. So before they can do that, they have to test the ground underneath to make sure it's strong enough to support all that extra weight. Especially where limestone is prominent like it is here, because these things exist. So they started drilling. They drilled 23 of these 6-inch test holes. Okay, they drilled 23 holes. Out of those 23, 8 of the test holes, when they got down to 33 feet, all of a sudden the drill bit just dropped into the hole. So I don't know why it took them 8 times to figure out they needed to investigate it, but that's what I'm told. So after the 8th bit dropped in, they're like, okay, you would think after the 1st or 2nd, but they decided, okay, we need to see what's up under there. So they expanded one of those 6-inch holes to this 24-inch hole right here. And they had a geologist on site, of course, so they went real high tech. They took their drill bit and they put a big leather strap on the end of it. And I read the geologist's account of this story. It's pretty cool. He stuck his foot in the leather strap and he hugged onto the drill bit. And they lowered him into a pitch black 33-foot hole. Now, they didn't know anything about this at that time, but we know now that when he came down through that hole, this cavern had been sealed to the outside world for about 14,000 years. So there's like a 99.9% probability that he was the first human being to ever enter this cave, which is kind of a cool thing to think about. You don't get a chance to be the first person to do something much anymore. So they lowered him down into here, and of course he saw what he saw. Actually, he was scared at first because the first thing he saw was this, which he mistook for a giant bear. I don't know. I guess after a 33-foot decline, sink down to a black hole, you might be a little bit fidgety. But they brought him down and he put his feet down right here. And he realized he was standing on this blackish stuff, which is kind of odd, he thought. And then he realized that this black stuff extended all the way over here. Anybody know what that black stuff is? Someone take a guess? Okay, let me give you a hint. At one of the periods when this cave was open to the outside world, there was a colony of bats that came in here and liked to roost in this area during the day. So what is it? Poop. Bat poop. Technically known as guano. There you go. Guano. Now you can see how this pile has been disturbed because they wanted to make a walkway. They didn't figure you'd want to walk over a pile of poop. So right where you're standing, it's about level with this right here. It's about 4 feet deep right here. Right up to that rock wall behind you. So they eliminated all that poop out of here so we could walk. And also an indicator of how old it is this calcite on top of it, these formations. Because remember, that's a very slow process, right? And so you can tell that has been there a long, long time because of all that calcite buildup on it. And maybe in a few hundred or 1,000 years, it will be completely encased in that calcite, which is kind of a neat thing. Now, a common question is, more so with this puddle over here, if you notice it as you walked in, because this one's got kind of a dirty bottom. But people often ask, could you drink this water? And the short answer would be yes, you can survive, but it wouldn't be recommended. It's probably high in mineral content, but you got to remember, we're directly underneath a highway. So oil, gas, maybe even like platinum from catalytic converters, who knows? So even though limestone acts like a filter, it hasn't gone through enough of that limestone to really purify it, but this water's journey is not over. This water is going to continue percolating down through the limestone another 150 feet until it reaches a huge underground reservoir called the Edwards Aquifer. Have you all heard of that? It's hugely important. Anywhere from Georgetown south all the way down to San Antonio, that whole area gets its fresh water from this huge underground aquifer. Now, by the time the water has gone through that much limestone, it is effectively pure. Thank goodness, because that's where we get our water from. So this is flowstone. This is our largest example of flowstone that we're going to see on this tour. There's actually one that's a couple that are larger on one of our other. It's called the Hidden Passages tour. But of course, when geologists saw this, when they were discovering the cave, they wanted to know more about it. So they went around to the backside and they did what's called a core drilling. So a core drill, if you don't know, is like you drill a hole into something, but the bit itself is hollow. So when you drill in and then you pull the bit out, you're pulling out a little core inside the bit. And that can be analyzed. They age old trees that way. There's another use for it. Classic one is they analyze ice samples from Greenland and stuff. Tells us a lot about ancient climate. But they did that, and based on the average growth rate of calcite, they estimated how old this feature is. So anybody want to guess how old this thing is? Come on, yes. How many? 2 million. Okay, that's a good guess. That's a good guess. Anybody else? Okay, not quite that old, but still old. Between 450 and 500,000 years old. So just to put that into a little context, again, people that look like us, modern humans, okay, Homo sapiens sapiens, the oldest fossils that have been found are about 300,000 years old. So that means when the first modern humans were started walking this earth, this thing was already 100,000 years old. And has been sitting here getting bigger for the entire extent of human history and human prehistory, all the way back to, when the first modern humans started walking the face of the earth. And it's still sitting here growing today. So why is it called flowstone? Because of this phenomenon right here. Remember I said it's the water is coming down through the roof of the cavern and then coming across the surface. So that water is loaded with calcite that it picked up as it came down through the limestone. As it flows over the surface, it's slowly depositing that calcite onto the feature. So while we stand here, it might get 1 micron taller. But you multiply that by tens and hundreds of thousands of years, and that's how you get something like this. So pretty cool. It's called the flowstone of time, or the great humbler, I say. All right, here. It's obviously unusual. This is called a scallop ceiling. Anybody want to guess what made that ceiling shape like that? Any ideas? I heard it. Water flow, exactly. Now, when that Balcones fault zone opened up back there, that allowed much more water to enter into the cavern, right, through that fault zone, as opposed to all the water that could just filter down through the limestone. So what that means is this cavern filled up with water all the way to the ceiling and flowed through here for thousands of years. As it did that, it shaped the ceiling like that. And what's interesting is we can tell something about the velocity of the water by the shape. So these rougher, pointier projections and these rougher surfaces like this indicate a slower flow of water. But if you look over here to the right, you can see clearly that there was a channel of faster moving water flowing in. I'm pretty sure from that end, from the Balcones fault at that end. But it came in, you can see how smooth that is. So the faster water came flowing in, and I believe kind of slowed down as a resistance with this room. And also you can see how smooth the walls are around. It smoothed off all these walls as the water flowed through here. I'm watching.
So apparently they call this the belly button of the cave. Yeah, this guy's got a bunch of dad jokes.
Okay, so this is called Castle Balcony because you can see kind of like a fairy tale castle up there floating on this balcony, cloud balcony type thing. But I'm more of a science guy, so here we go. See these horizontal white lines right here? Can you see those? Okay, where did those come from? So you have to go back down here. Remember that about 150 feet below the ground level here is that huge reservoir of water, okay? It's called the Edwards Aquifer. In 1997, the aquifer was so full that it actually bubbled up into the cave. The water table was so high, and it proceeded to go all the way up to there. So the cavern flooded in 1997, and these are the high water marks. As the surface water was evaporating, it made calcite crystallize onto these structures right here, giving us a little record of how high the water went. Now, if you live in the area, you're well aware that in the last 30 years, the population has grown hugely between Georgetown and San Antonio. So geologists say that because we're all pulling our water from down here and the huge amount of population growth, that it probably will never rise that high again. At least not in any numbers that mean anything to us, so it might be thousands of years. Okay, so as you come walking in, you can probably easily tell this is our largest room in the cavern and on this floor. Maybe in the whole cavern system. But this is called the Inner Cathedral. So if you would, direct your attention over there, right when we just walk by. You see that sloping pile of rock and stuff right in the entrance there? That's another offshoot of that huge debris cone that I showed you, that rock slide, where that sinkhole was. So over thousands of years, water just naturally is going to flow to the lowest point, which is down in here. And so it carried rock, dirt, and also thousands of bones. So paleontologists call this a bone sink. Okay? Bones being essentially very light, they tend to travel further than like the heavier rocks and stuff. So this really got concentrated with thousands of bones. So of course the paleontologists wanted to investigate immediately. So in '65, before the cavern was even open, they started digging. And they did excavations between 65 and 70, 1965 and 1970. But there's a big problem down there. Do you see that dirt down there? I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to tell by looking. But this dirt down here never dries. It never dries out. They say it goes from wet to wet. That's about it. And so that's a problem because fossils don't really form well in an environment that's just constantly wet. So even though they were finding many samples of bone, basically as soon as they tried to move the bone, they just disintegrated. They were like chalk. They couldn't be recovered. So after 1970, that was the last time they did an excavation here. There's been no more digging down here since then, because ultimately they were doing more harm than they were, scientific discovery. So the last few bones they dug up are right over here. You can see that mammoth leg bone right there. That was from a juvenile or a young mammoth. I think that was its femur. And over to the right are some shards of its tusk. But they left it there because if they tried to move it, it would probably destroy it. So yeah, so there's really, even though there's probably thousands of bone fragments down there, they really can't be safely, or I guess ethically even, recovered without just destroying them. So, as we move on to the next chamber here, there's one more thing in this room, up on the ceiling.
Now that's an odd
They
formation.
discovered the cavern in '63, and then they immediately started working on that ramp that we came in on. But that process took, well, they didn't know how long it was going to take. But they knew it was going to take a while. They didn't want to wait that long to start developing the cavern. So while the ramp, the entranceway, and all that tunnel that we came in was being developed, they drilled this roughly 3, maybe a 4-foot hole, and installed this 60-foot ladder. Okay, so all this concrete we're walking on, all these light fixtures, the lighting to the light fixtures, the handrails, all this stuff, they carried down here for the first 18 months by hand. So I don't know if you carried many bags of concrete, but climbing a 60-foot ladder with a concrete on your shoulders wouldn't be a fun job. So after, of course, once the ramp opened up, that was the easiest way to get in here. So they basically welded a steel grating at the top of the hole. So, you can't get in and out of that hole anymore. Find a seat anywhere on that rock wall. I'm going to do something real quick that I normally do at the end of this room, but since there's nobody behind us, it works out perfectly. So lights are going out in 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah, if you got a watch or a glowy thing, try to cover it up. There we go. There we go.
Wow.
Yeah, your brain actually kind of struggles. It actually, kind of fools you into thinking I see a watch over there. All right. So that's pretty cool, huh? So now, next question. Have you all ever heard of like fluorescence or like a fluorescent light? Mm-hmm. Okay. What fluorescence is when you excite the atoms of a substance with electromagnetic radiation, which could be light or heat, it starts to emit light of its own. So a classic example is when you would put like a black light, on different bam, glowy. Right? So the strings, your socks, and the shoes, nice. They're fluorescent, right? Okay, now why am I talking about fluorescence? That looks cool. Why am I talking about fluorescence? Because this calcite stuff that I've been talking about, calcite fluoresces when it's exposed to black light. So if you look up towards the ceiling, this is what calcite looks like when it fluoresces.
Ooh.
Yeah. And some people see kind of a monster there.
Oh, there's a monster. Look at the teeth.
All right. So, and calcite also has another interesting property. Okay. Not only does it fluoresce, it's also phosphorescent, which means I can take my light source away from the calcite and it's going to continue to glow. So I've got a little demonstration of that for you right over here. You ready? This.
Oh my god, that's cool. Wow. It holds a light. Yeah.
So I've been working on this to see if I can pull it off. I'm going to write my name in cursive. Ready?
Gary. There you go. Yeah. Well done.
All right, lights coming on in 3, 2, 1. And it turns out a lot of minerals, calcite is a mineral. A lot of minerals fluoresce and different colors depending on what their makeup is. So pretty cool. So this room is called Lake of the Moon, and I've been doing this job since just before June. and it's been dry down here up until the last 2 weeks, you know, with all that rain that we got, of course. It's finally worked its way down here and filled up the lake, so it's really pretty. So right now your feet are about 75 feet below the surface. There are parts of the cavern that go down as far as 130 feet below the surface, but we don't see them on this tour. And to give you an example of the size of our cavern here, you just saw 1/2 mile of cavern, right? There are over 5 miles of surveyed cavern. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. We've actually got 3 tours. We've got this one, and then we've got the hidden passages, which is no walkway, no lighting. All you get is a flashlight, and everything's a lot tighter. You know, it's really cool. And then you got, for the very brave, you've got the wild caving experience, which is, you know, knee pads, elbow pads, you know, a helmet with a light, and you're on your belly for 4 hours, crawling through little openings like this. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. But anyway, so some people like to take a picture. You know, this is really pretty. You know, take a picture with people, or you know, with that in the background. If you want to take some pictures, that's cool. But I'd like to head up in about 2 minutes. So if you want to take pictures, go ahead and knock those out.
Yeah.
I'll get the background. Just stand right here. I'll get the background. No, it was still very exactly the same. Oh,
You want to go? Sure. Yeah. Do you want a portrait or landscape? Okay. All ready? Here we go. All right, we're ready, y'all. We're just going to pass behind this group. He says, right here on the left. Everybody? All right. We're going to stay to the left. Okay, so if you do that hidden passage tour I was talking about, that's where you're going to come out. Yeah, and so a lot of times, as guys, you haven't done the adventure tour before, they'll kind of give you like this half of the adventure tour as well. Yeah. Here we go. Matt's and handrail.
can actually see the water waving down the formation. It's funny, when I was driving down here, I was thinking, oh man, I wish I brought my UV light. I bet you some of this stuff would look amazing. So I'm glad they covered that a little bit. Look at that. I gotta duck down on some of these places. They tell you with these flow stones you're not supposed to touch them, so they have this one here that you can touch. Because apparently you get the oil from your hands on it and it stops growing. Every time I've been told that story in the past, it said it stops growing forever. This guy just said it takes about 100 years for the water to wash the oils off, so I don't know. That does sound more reasonable to me. Still, don't want to touch them, right?
Okay, I'm gonna have you wait right here, and I'm gonna make a phone call. What do you guys like on your pizza?
And then this is the entrance into the tunnel. They had to blast us all out. Still feels pretty cool, but at some point that heat's gonna catch up, and it's in the 90s outside. Nice 72 in here. Starting to warm up now, I can feel it. I remember when I was here the first time, they had some kind of cool collection of some fossils. They actually get some other stuff now too. I don't know if it all came from here, but kind of a nice collection of some stuff here. Nice rocks, a few little fossils there.
We're running pretty low on those,
Yeah, see, I got a trilobite here last time. Yeah, a lot of this seems to be geared more towards kids. Little pieces, oh, some celestite, some celestite, some quartz. Obviously, they're shaping those and make them into hearts and stuff like that. Yeah, nothing I can't live without.
No, ma'am. No sunstone.
Or petrified wood. That's pretty. Yeah, some kind of cool fossils here. I haven't actually been over here. Mammoth teeth, mammoth leg bones. Let's see what's in here. Oh, okay, that's just another look into the pit that you go into when you go in. That's kind of cool. Like I said, I didn't really spend a whole bunch of time out here last time I was here, so I'm gonna wander around a little bit. Yeah, so you go down the pit here. Basically, you hit the dead end underneath the or by over there by the picnic benches, and then we go way over there, and I guess that hole that we saw with the ladder going down, that's on the other side of the I-35 there. So you heard the whole story too. It wasn't just the building of the freeway that was the issue. It was the fact that they had to build the bridge going over the train tracks that were right here. That was the only reason they discovered that thing. Oh, it looks like maybe they're going to put some people in the zip line thing here. I don't know. Is that how they get them up there now? Maybe? It isn't the full zip line thing like I did then. It sounds like you start and end here. And maybe the ladder on the other end is just in case something goes wrong and they got to rescue you up there. That probably is better, because I mean, if they could pull you up to the top and then drop you. I'm going to stay and watch this here for a minute. Yeah, see, that's how it works. They haul you up there. That's probably just as well. Like I said, I wouldn't want to climb that ladder. And of course, I missed the money shot. The battery chose that moment to die on me. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the zip lines that I went to in California that one time, that was more like a zip line thing than this is. This is more like a ride. They haul you up to the top, and then you come back down seated on the low platform thing. So, yeah, I don't know. That's I don't know how much business they do with that, but that's kind of cool. I'm gonna run over here, see what this is, and then we'll wind this video up, I think. I think this might be another one of those kid attraction things. It looks like they let you mine for gold over here. Doesn't look like they're doing it at the moment, but hey, you can't blame them for trying to, you know, expand the customer base. This is one of those things you hit it once, probably you're good, but if they can build other stuff to bring in customers, and then that's a good thing, I guess, right? Looks like this is another entrance into something. I wonder where this goes. Yeah, see, it looks like they let you mine here. Go over here and mine for gold when you're doing your thing. Yeah, see, that's how it works. You buy the sand here. And I guess it isn't just isn't gold. It looks like it's gems and stuff like that. There you go. So you buy the bag of sand. The sand has the stuff mixed into it, and you use the little strainer things here, and I would bet you they even recycle the sand. Slicker than snot, right? All right, well, I think that pretty much wraps up this one. So I'm gonna head on back to Waco. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.